Some of the most painful confusion comes from being very smart and learning to distrust what you already know. That's the difference between intellect and intelligence. Most people are taught to develop one and quietly override the other. We learn how to explain, analyze, justify, and reason. But very few of us are taught how to recognize the intelligence that lives in the body, the part that senses before language, that registers truth before interpretation. And over time, that gap grows. The mind gets louder, the signals get quieter, and confusion starts to feel normal. This episode traces how intelligence lives in the body before it reaches language, and how intellect forms later to translate what was already true inside of you. What we're doing here today is moving backward, from words to sensation, from explanation to origin. That direction shapes growth and determines how forward movement actually happens. Confusion forms when words are trusted before sensation, when explanation is given priority over what the body registered first. And to be clear, I didn't arrive at this distinction through theory. I arrived here because my body kept knowing things long before I was allowed to trust that knowing. For years, my intelligence would register truth, and my intellect learned to override it, repeatedly. And every time I ignored that first signal, my body paid a harsh price. This isn't just personal language or poetic interpretation, and it's not a metaphor. In biology and cognitive science, intelligence is defined as the capacity of a living system to sense, adapt, and respond to its environment. At the cellular level, intelligence refers to body signal detection, regulation, and response in service of survival, orientation, and coherence. Cells don't think. They receive information. They respond to stimuli. They adjust behavior based on safety, threat, and context. That responsiveness is intelligence. Intellect is defined as the capacity for reasoning, abstraction, symbol use, and conceptual thought. Intellect works with language, comparison, memory, and meaning making. It analyzes experience. It explains experience. It organizes experience. But it does so after something has already impacted the body. Biologically, intelligence is primary. Intellect is secondary. One senses, the other interprets. And when those two are aligned, they work beautifully and harmoniously together. And when they're not, the body still knows, even when the mind argues. Intelligence doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It waits. And then it collects what's due, in its own timing, not yours. Cellular intelligence doesn't think, it responds, contracts, softens, senses direction. It freezes, or it opens. Every cell in your body is listening to environment, tone, timing, presence, absence, pressure, force, ease. Your nervous system is not symbolic. It is relational. It knows who is safe before you can explain why. It knows when something is over before the story ends. It knows when staying costs you losing yourself. That knowing is intelligence. Intellect comes much later. Intellect arrives when language arrives, when explanation becomes possible and meaning is assigned. Intellect is the interpreter. It works with symbols, words, and comparisons. Intellect asks, why do I feel this? What does this mean? How do I explain this? How will this be received? Intellect isn't bad. It's a very powerful tool that we are equipped with as human beings. But it is a tool, not the source. You are the source. Here's where things get messy and blur lines. Intelligence speaks once. Intellect speaks over it. Intelligence says no. The body sends a clear message, and intellect responds and says, but logically, this makes sense. Intelligence registers misalignment. Intellect negotiates with it. And very slowly, over time, in continued practice of overriding our internal messaging system, we're trained to trust the explanation over the experience. Because intellect is rewarded, the body learns to defer. Internal signals arise, explanations replace them. Over time, trust shifts outward. That's how our bodies learn override as a default. At the cellular level, override is violent. It can strip years off of our lives. It can cause depletion and unknown confusion inside of us. It is gradually layered over time. Every time the body signals go and the intellect says stay, cells tighten. Every time the body senses danger and the intellect reframes it, cells brace. Every time timing is ignored, the nervous system loses trust. This is how intelligence gets buried. Not erased, but shadowed over. Cells do not argue, persuade, or convince. They notify. And when those notifications aren't received, they escalate. Anxiety is escalation. Rage is escalation. Collapse is escalation. Numbness is escalation. Not because your body is malfunctioning, but because whispering didn't work. This is why thinking our way through felt sensations does not work. Because intelligence is not cognitive. It is biological. It lives in heart rate variability, muscle tone, breath rhythm, digestive flow, automatic unconscious responses. Your body always knows before your story catches up. Here's the paradox. The more intellectual someone becomes, the easier it is to become disembodied. High intellect can rationalize self-betrayal, normalize misalignment, spiritualize avoidance, and intellectualize pain instead of feeling it. Emotions are physiological activations, not punishments. They register in the nervous system as shifts in arousal, chemistry, and sensation. The word emotion comes from emotion, energy in motion. So when an emotional response is overridden, explained away, or suppressed, the activation doesn't resolve. It remains incomplete. Held in the body is tension, elevated stress load, and disrupted regulation. Unprocessed activation places continuous demand on the system, on immune function, hormonal balance, cardiovascular strain, and inflammatory pathways. Over time, what isn't metabolized doesn't disappear. It anxiety patterns, digestive disruption, and increased vulnerability to illness. The nervous system tracks what the mind avoids. And this is why feeling matters, not as indulgence, but as the mechanism through which activation completes and the system returns to baseline. Which helps explain why some of the smartest people you know can explain everything and still miss what's right in front of them. They're not unintelligent. They're overinterpreted. They're not confused. They're convinced. And this shows up everywhere. In work, in healing spaces, in spirituality. But it shows up most painfully in relationships. One person leads with intelligence, felt sense, timing, attunement. The other leads with intellect, explanation, reframing, resolution. One says, here's what's happening, while the other says, let me explain why it isn't. And at a cellular level, that doesn't feel like disagreement. It feels like denied reality. I had lived this dynamic for so long, where my knowing arrived whole and was met with explanation instead of receptivity, where my body said, something is wrong, and the response was meaning, logic, reassurance, override. And the longer that went on, the more my system had to intensify, just to stay intact. That intensity wasn't defiance. It was my system trying to survive what I hadn't yet learned to recognize. It was asking for attunement. Attunement is intelligence recognizing intelligence. No fixing, no reframing, no solutions. Just, I feel that. I believe you. Trust what your body knows. So when that doesn't happen, cells go into defense. That's biology. And this is where rage comes into the conversation. Rage is not dysfunction. Rage is a cellular authority reclaiming itself. It's the body saying, stop negotiating my sensations. It's intelligence standing up when intellect refuses to yield. There was a point where I realized I wasn't angry because I didn't feel understood. I was angry because I was still trying to earn permission and external confirmation for what my body already knew. And the moment I stopped explaining myself and outsourcing trust, something in me eased. Not because anyone else changed, but because I did. Integration is not balance, it's order. Intelligence leads, intellect follows. Cells transmit messages, mind translates them. Compass first, map second. Anything else is disorientation. This is why I trust my intelligence now, without asking it to make sense first. I don't need to convince myself anymore. I don't need external agreement or input. I need to trust my own authority and remain intact. My wisdom wasn't earned through being smart. It was earned through surviving what happened when I ignored myself and choosing not to do that anymore. If you've ever felt like, I've been saying this for years, you probably have. Not because you lacked language, but because intelligence doesn't need better phrasing. It needs recognition. So if you're listening to this and something in you feels relieved or heavy or just quietly seen, that's intelligence recognizing itself. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to explain this to anyone, unless your body is telling you otherwise. But notice, listen, feel into, where have I been trusting the map over the compass? Where have I been explaining instead of listening to myself? Where does my body already know? That's where your intelligence lives and breathes your own truth. And it's been there all along. You were never meant to think your way home. You were meant to listen and to feel your way there. I no longer keep my truth locked inside of me. I reveal it because it is a gift that I know is meant to be shared. If this resonated, you're invited to walk beside me, but only if the path leads you back to yourself.